A revolution in German fighter design, for she's the first German radial engine fighter of this war. The Focke-Wulf 190 has set us some tricky problems in the past. Spitz and Thunderbolts have got her taped now, but the 190 is still a vital factor in Germany's defense of her European stronghold. Lancasters by night and fortresses by day often come up against her. She's versatile too, and with a speed of 390, mixes tip and run raiding with night and day fighting. From the air, land or sea, the Focke-Wulf 190 is a plane which calls for instant recognition. First impressions, a low-wing radial engine fighter. Simple lines, hasn't she? Notice that those wings have blunt tips, and that the tailplane is narrow and rectangular. Now for a really good look. Slightly underneath, but all the features are still here. The radial engine makes the 190's nose completely round, and the size of that nose gives you some idea of the amount of power that's packed into it. Check up on the low wings with dihedral from the roots, and the cockpit stepped well up to give the pilot a good view. That gives you quite a bit to go on. Something more. The 190 is sometimes seen out with a bomb. A 500-pounder slung here. Don't get it mixed up with her auxiliary petrol tanks, which she carries under the wings when she wants to increase her range from 500 miles to just over 1,000. Now look at her from a bit further underneath. Plenty more here. That radial nose is quite short. The wings have straight tapered edges and blunt tips. That's a pretty useful clue. The tailplane has straight edges and blunt tips as well, but it's narrow in chord and has scarcely any taper. An almost perfect rectangle, isn't it? Would you know the 190 from above? Well, let's get on top of the job. You'll have to look carefully, for there's a good example of the use of camouflage here. But let's make it easy this time. That's better. See those simple lines again. The radial engine seems to have controlled the design of the whole of the fuselage. As she moves into side view, here's a better view of the fuselage. Yes, the shape of that BMW 801 engine dominates the lines of the fuselage from large spinner right back to fin and rudder, which has an outline that's easy to remember. The position and shape of the cockpit offer one more very good point to go for. That fairing underneath is to streamline the bomb rack, which is usually mounted here on the bomber version. On the fighter, this fairing doesn't appear at all. Now for the next angle. Hold it. You can't miss that short nose. And despite the radial engine, that fuselage has a lean look at this angle. Now we've got an ideal view of the wings and the tailplane. The wings, remember, have straight taper to both edges and blunt tips. The tailplane has blunt tips as well, but is narrow in chord with scarcely any taper. Rectangular is the word to remember. Okay, let her go. You've got the detail now, so check her over for yourself and make sure you've got the general impression, which really counts. Sum up. Short circular nose, low wings with dihedral from roots, straight tapered wings with blunt tips, narrow rectangular tailplane. She's the Focke-Wulf 190, but never let a 190 get away. She's been spotted. Hot on the trail goes the Thunderbolt. Now for it. And what about you? If you can't pick out the Focke-Wulf right through this action, your recognition's at fault, and you must see this film again. Down among the dead men goes the Focke-Wulf 190.
Somewhere in Europe, enemy bombers are loading up. Bombs for Britain. Ju-88s to rain destruction on your country, your home, your friends, perhaps even your children. And if you don't first spot them, how will you stop them? So let's get down to it on a captured Ju-88. First impression, that bulbous glazed nose, two long engines in line with it, and the typical German fuselage, long and slim. The impressions aren't enough. So now for the detail in head-on. Almost low wing, with dihedral from roots. Then that bulbous glazed nose, with a gun position jutting out beneath it. And perhaps most important of all, those large underslung engines. For recognition purposes, call them radial. That's the dope in head-on then. Get going. Now from just below, and the engines still look radial, but the fact is they're inline engines. And it's the circular radiators mounted in front that give that radial look. And see the wings, how the taper to narrow tips gives a pointed appearance at this angle. Make a mental note too that the jutting gun position below the nose destroys the low wing effect which you saw in head-on. But he's an 88 all right, and no mistake. Once we get him against the sky, the wing plan shows up well. That's no ordinary shape. See the break in the wing taper and the curve to the wing tips. Long engines in line with the nose, and you've got the Ju-88. If you want to make assurance doubly sure, take in the forward position of the tailplane, making the fin and rudder stick out a mile. As dive bomber or level bomber, he normally has 4 external bomb racks. Here only 2 are fitted. The others should be there and there. That is detail within the outline, but useful as an extra clue to recognition. The 88 has been adapted for fighting as well as for bombing, and he's as fast as he's slim. As in so many Huns, most of the works are up front there. The crew sit in a friendly huddle in the bulbous, glazed cabin. That's not the sort of nose a fighter wants, so the Hun gives the fighter version a solid one. The underslung engines add to the thickness up front, and behind the cabin the fuselage is slim and rakish, with a large fin and rudder which has a very straight leading edge. Unmistakable, those lines, a gift in side view too. Good camouflage spoils the top view of the wing plan, but you can still say Ju-88 because of the long engines in line with the nose and that tail unit. See the width of that tailplane, and don't miss its taper and narrow chord. But even more important than its shape is its position in relation to the large single fin and rudder. So top view too, he's a sitter. More camouflage trouble here, but you can still see quite clearly the jutting engines, the glazed nose and cabin, the straight back, and the tail unit that belongs to the Ju-88. So much for the detail then. On your way, Nazi. Now get a further rifle of him and check over the points we've talked about. He's all yours. So our captured Hun peels off back to his hangar. But that isn't the end of it. No, no. The enemy is on the job, but so are men who'll know their recognition. Got him! And how did they know him? Well, let's reconstruct. Those long radial engines and a bulbous nose in line with them, a wing which tapers to narrow tips, a slim fuselage, and a tailplane well forward of the fin and rudder. Ju-88. He's asking for it. He's had it.
Like a skyrocket? Heaven's the wrong destination for that baby. That's a Zero, the real McCoy. It was shot down over Alaska, and as luck would have it, the only thing that got really damaged was the pilot. He broke his neck. Swell, huh? Think you can recognize her again? This is the Japanese Zero. Take a good look at her. Your recognition of the Zero may save your life. Your recognition of the Zero may destroy its life. Watch her closely. Study every characteristic to aid you in your recognition. Look at that nose. A perfect circle broken only by the oil cooler. Note the slight dihedral angle. Look at that low wing and middle tail. Notice the oil cooler and air scoop directly below the engine cowling. See how the fuselage tapers to a point in the rear. It's like a big cigar. Note the tapering edges of the wings, the rounded tips. See how straight the line is from engine to tail. And that tail, see how the leading edge of the vertical piece tapers more than the trailing edge. Look how it curves out to a point away from the nose. Think you can recognize her? Don't think. Be sure. Watch her. Watch her closely. Yes, we know that's no Zero. That's a P-40. But did you know? They don't look alike to you now, do they? Look at the difference in the shape of those noses. The P-40 with its deep radiator is oval. The Zero is a perfect circle, broken only by that oil cooler. Get those undercarriage fairings on the P-40. Compare the tails. The tail of the P-40 is high. The tail of the Zero is middle. Let's look at her from below. Look at the pointed nose of the P-40 and the blunt nose of the Zero. The leading edge of the wings of the P-40 has no taper. The wings of the Zero taper back. The tail of the P-40 is notched. The tail of the Zero tapers into the fuselage, which extends beyond it. Now, let's take them in profile. The engine of the P-40 is inline. The Zero is radial. Note the deep radiator on the P-40 as compared to the shallow oil cooler and air scoop on the Zero. Next, see how the cockpit canopy on the P-40 is much further back from the nose than on the Zero. What's more, the canopy on the P-40 fits into the fuselage, while the canopy on the Zero sits on the fuselage. Now for the tails. The P-40's is rounded and curves in toward the nose. The Zero's is pointed and curves out away from the nose. No one could possibly mistake them for each other, could they? You think not? Well, let's see. Let's take the case of one pilot. His name was Jimmy Saunders. His story starts on the day when he was flying to a base somewhere in the Far East.
Come in. Lieutenant Saunders reporting for duty, sir.
Glad to have you with us, Lieutenant.
Glad to be here, Major.
We can certainly use you. Sit down. Cigarette?
Oh, thank you, sir.
How was the flight over?
Well, I made it, sir, with the help of a P-40.
You like our P-40?
Oh, yes, sir. It's a nice airplane.
Good. Then maybe we can count on you not to shoot any of them down.
I didn't have any plans along that line, sir.
It's been done, you know.
You mean jet pilots?
I mean American pilots. Men with as much enthusiasm for the P-40 as you have, but with an unfortunate lack of ability to tell a friend from an enemy.
Excuse me, sir, but how could anybody mistake a P-40 for a Zero?
A great many things can happen in the excitement of preparing for combat. Too many pilots are too anxious to make sure of the kill. They start shooting before they've made certain what they're shooting at. It's a damn sight better to let a Zero get away than to knock down one of your own planes. Say nothing of one of your own men. We've few enough to spare around here.
Sir, I had no idea.
We're not broadcasting the fact.
I know, but...
Now, don't misunderstand me, Lieutenant. It's not a common occurrence. Most of our men know their planes. Identification becomes second nature to them. If there's still a doubt in their minds, they maneuver close enough to make sure. Of course, there is such a thing as being too cautious. Take the case of the man who drew those silhouettes.
Say, that's quite a job.
He had plenty of time for it. Been flat on his back for 2 months. Shot down while he was still maneuvering around trying to decide if the other plane was a Zero or not. He found out. If he'd known his identification, that Zero might never have gotten him. Well, he learned his lesson, and to make certain that others would profit by it, he put it all down in those. All right, let's see if you can do your wafting on the Zero.
Yes, sir. With or without looking?
You might as well make it easy on yourself now. It'll be a lot tougher upstairs.
Yes, sir. Wings. Leading edge tapers, trailing edge tapers, tips rounded, slight dihedral angle.
You might add to that that there are two 20-millimeter cannons mounted one in each wing, probably Swiss Oerlikon guns.
Yes, sir. Here's something I didn't know about, sir.
Huh? Oh, yes. The wingtips can be folded so as to utilize more space in a carrier. Incidentally, the span is 39 feet 4 inches. All right, go on with the engine.
Engine, radial, Mitsubishi version of our Cyclone.
That's right. There are twin-row 14 cylinders. Now for the fuselage.
Fuselage. Blunt nose with a spinner on it. Cockpit canopy sits on the fuselage. Retractable landing gear with fairing plates. Say, there seems to be one gear missing, sir.
The gears are operated hydraulically. As a result, the wheels retract alternately.
I guess there are a couple of things I don't know about this airplane, sir.
I'm glad to hear you admit it. That's the beginning of wisdom. The wings and the fuselage are in one piece, made of duraluminum. There's another feature worth noting. The entire fuselage is flush riveted. With the result, there are very few protuberances to cause wind resistance. The length is 28 feet 5 inches. There's a pair of machine guns mounted in grooves above the cowling. They're 7.7 millimeter, and they're synchronized to fire through the propeller. I hope you don't ever get them on your tail.
I'm with you there, sir.
All right, finish her up.
Tail. Leading edge of flat surface tapers more than trailing edge, with the fuselage extending to a point beyond it. Leading edge of vertical piece tapers more than trailing edge. Tail is pointed, curves out away from the nose. I guess that's it, sir.
Good enough. As you probably know, there are 3 types of Zeros. One is a single float plane without riggers. All 3 have slightly varying characteristics. But this is the type you're most apt to tangle with, so get to know her. All of her.
Yes, sir. I'll look for the balls of rouge on her wings and fuselage.
Yeah, I wouldn't depend on that if I were you. The Japs have a neat trick of painting her all sorts of colors. Sometimes even like our P-40s. Coffee?
No, thanks. Well, sir, how soon do I get a chance to knock one of them down?
Soon enough. But don't get any idea that the Zero's a pushover. With 340 miles an hour top speed, a service ceiling of 35,500 feet, and a normal range of 700 miles, increased by a droppable extra fuel tank, there's not much she can't do. They built her light and maneuverable, threw away the armor protection for the pilot and the self-sealing gasoline tanks. She only weighs around 5,200 pounds, fully loaded, and has a horsepower of over 900. And when you see the speed with which she climbs, you'll appreciate what I'm saying. There's just no use trying to dogfight a Zero. That's out. Your best bet is to hit fast, either the wings or just behind the cockpit. But if you miss, don't hang around.
As bad as all that, sir?
Seeing's believing. But if I were you, I'd take my word for it.
Yes, sir.
Now, here's our operations. When you're on your own, you'll do patrol from our base here to these outlying islands.
Well, the big day finally came. Saunders was on his own, out Jap hunting. Looked sort of keyed up. Wouldn't you be? Don't expect too much, Lieutenant. Not on your first day. What's up? See something? It's a plane, all right. But what sort of a plane? Friend or enemy? P-40 or Zero? Well, now's the time to remember your recognition. Now, has it a deep radiator? Round tail curving in toward nose? Inline engine? Then it's a P-40. Or has that plane an oil cooler and air scoop? Pointed tail curving out away from nose? Radial engine? If it has, then it's a Zero. Tough to tell from here. Maybe if you got closer. Start climbing, Saunders. Get your recognition.
Wish I could apologize from here.
Well, what's stopping you? Go on over there.
Are you sure it was a P-40?
I'm positive, sir. After he held fire, he drew up and dipped his wings in recognition. I don't like to complain, sir, but do we have to fight our own Air Force, too?
You've got good cause for complaint. I don't know who's responsible for this, but when I do... Come in.
Major, I want to... I'm sorry, sir. Lieutenant Saunders reporting, sir. I just wanted
Lieutenant? Wellen here has been telling me that he was attacked this afternoon by one of our planes. Do you by any chance know anything about this?
Yes, sir. I'm afraid it was me.
He's afraid. Well, Saunders, what have you got to say for yourself?
Not much, sir. From a distance, I'm sure it was a zero. Then I held my fire.
A little late on your identification, weren't you?
Yes, sir. But I did run.
How far were you from the other plane when you opened fire?
I'm not quite sure, sir.
We'll soon find out. Have your film developed immediately.
Yes, sir. Major, I want
It can wait, Lieutenant. Get after that film.
Yes, sir.
Corporal, get the projector ready.
Yes, sir.
How could you start firing at that distance? Hold it. Didn't you look in your sight?
I thought I did, sir.
You don't seem to be very sure of yourself, Lieutenant.
I'm sure of one thing, Major.
After I look at that airplane. It's closer now, I realize, but even at the distance you started firing, you should have been able to identify it. Look at that deep radiator, the inline engine. That cockpit canopy fits into the fuselage. The tail is round and curves in toward the nose. All right, Corporal, take it away.
There's more film, sir.
I'm sorry, Lieutenant, but I have an appointment. You can stay and run it if you want to. Coming, Weldon.
If you don't mind, sir, I think I'll stay for a few more feet. I want to see how close I came to being wiped out.
Carry on, Corporal.
Now I know what a clay pigeon feels like. Hey, wait a minute. That's not me. It's a zero.
What? Hold it. Well, Saunders, I think I'll forego that appointment. Let's hear about this.
Well, sir, following my encounter with the lieutenant here, I was flying along, wondering if I should slit my throat. I felt like a candidate for the Jap Air Force. Getting time to turn for home. Not that I was homesick. I had a hunch what was in store for me, but well, there was no use stalling. I was thinking, that other guy's probably back already, telling the major how he almost got knocked down by another P-40. I was thinking what you'd tell me when I got back. Suddenly, I stopped thinking. I saw something. Another plane. I tried to make her out. She was too far away. I started to climb. I had to get my recognition right this time.
Cigar-shaped fuselage tapering to point and rear.
Check.
Wings post to nose. Canopy sits on fuselage.
Check.
Tail pointed. Curving out. Blunt nose. Stubby spinner.
Radial engine. Oil cooler. Air scoop at bottom of nose. It's a zero. Check. Explosion and... Well, I guess that's all, sir.
Well, that's enough.
Holy smoke.
What's the matter with you, Weldon?
Well, it just occurred to me, sir. There, but by the grace of God, went on.
I see your point. I don't think, however, that you'll have anything to worry about in the future. At least not from Saunders. He seems to have learned his lesson. By a method I'd hardly recommend putting into general practice, but nevertheless he's learned it thoroughly. If every pilot would only realize the importance of identification and become letter perfect in the art of identification, There'll be fewer lives lost and fewer planes destroyed. Know your enemy, but also know your friend.
Well, they know their friends, all right. And what's more, they know their enemy. Do you? Radial engine. Perfect circle, broken only by oil cooler. Low wing. Cockpit canopy sits on cigar-shaped fuselage. Blunt nose. Stubby spinner. Oil cooler and air scoop. Fuselage tapering to point in rear. Closeness of wings to nose. Radial engine. Canopy close to nose. Tail pointed and curving out away from nose. Remember, on your recognition of the Zero may depend your life. Know it, so you can destroy it. This is the Japanese Zero.
Japanese treachery and reliance on surprise attack make Nippon's Air Force a menace which must be quickly recognized and dealt with. It is a mongrel Air Force composed of imitations of well-known American and European types. The enemy has copied American pursuit airplanes like the Boeing P-26A, an obsolete U.S. pursuit. Planes like the P-36, now a second-line U.S. pursuit, have also been imitated. Only swift and sure identification will enable our anti-aircraft batteries or other defense units to shoot at hostile aircraft, avoiding the mistake of firing on our own. Japanese military aircraft have well-defined markings. When it is visible, the red ball representing the rising sun is all you have to see to know you're sighting the enemy. Japanese camouflage is somewhat like that of the British. Bottoms are usually painted a light blue. The top and sides of this British airplane are painted with irregular bands of different colors in a manner similar to the Japanese scheme. The Japanese Army and Navy both number their airplanes according to year. Fighter 96 refers to a fighter model adopted in 1936. This popular fighter was adopted by the Navy in 1936 and designated the 96. The Army took over the same ship in 1937 and called it the 97. The difference between these two airplanes is slight and may be disregarded. A front view of the 96 or 97 presents a definite pattern: the low dihedral wing, the radial air-cooled motor, and the fixed alighting gear. Looking down on this standard Jap fighter gives us a view of a blunt, swollen nose and wings with trailing edges curving in from rounded tips. The open cockpit is an unusual feature on modern military aircraft. Approaching from the side, the squat triangular tail is noticeable. Also, note the ridge on top of the fuselage running from tail to cockpit. There is a narrowing of the fuselage where it joins the motor housing, making the motor housing stand out. It can also be seen that the pilot sits well forward, just over the wing. Just behind the cockpit, there is a step up to the ridge which extends along the top of the fuselage to the tail. The fixed landing gear with wheel pants is a good sign that the fighter is Japanese. A side view also shows the squat triangular tail, blending into the fuselage in front and separated from the fuselage by a notch in the rear. From below, the nose and wings are distinctive. The oval tail and the Japanese markings are additional means of identification. Our P-36, now a second-line pursuit, is the American military airplane most comparable to the Japanese 96 and 97. The fixed landing gear on the Jap fighter is the outstanding mark of distinction between the two planes. The dihedral of the wings on our P-36 starts from the fuselage, while on the Jap fighter it starts from the landing gear. From above, the straightly tapering wings of our P-36 contrast with the knife blade wings of the 96-97. The oval tail of the Jap plane differs from our P-36's. The open cockpit on the standard Japanese fighter is a sure mark of identification. From the side, the major points which distinguish the Japanese plane are the cockpit, tail, and fixed landing gear. From below, the fixed landing gear of the Japanese plane extends beyond the leading edge of the wing. The P-36 has retractable landing gear. Notice again the oval tail of the 96-97 and the bird wing tail of our P-36. A graph of the rate of climb of these two planes shows the Jap fighter is inferior to our P-36 and hence far below our present pursuit airplanes. This Japanese fighter mounts two synchronized fuselage guns and two guns on the wings. The best angle from which to attack this fighter is from a front quarter or from the rear. To protect the pilot, there are an armored bucket seat and two strips of armor on the bottom of the cockpit. This improved version of the 96 and 97 is also used by the Japanese Army and Navy. It has a cleaner appearance and it is faster and better armed. The improved fighter above and the old model below present somewhat similar silhouettes. They are both low-wing monoplanes with air-cooled motors. However, retractable landing gear is sometimes found on the improved model. Looking down on the two planes, there are only minor differences. For instance, the open cockpit of the 96-97 on the left as compared to the covered cockpit of the later model on the right. Except for the closed-in cockpit, the new ship has a slimmer appearance. The noticeable notch created by the open cockpit of the older ship has been covered on the improved model. Also, the fuselage on the improved fighter merges into the motor housing in clean, unbroken lines, and the tail assembly is taller and more pointed. If the improved fighter on the right has fixed landing gear, a view from below will reveal few distinguishing features. Both planes have blunt noses, and the outlines of their wings and tails are very similar. The newer fighter, with or without retractable landing gear, is armed with 2 machine guns mounted on the fuselage and 2 or 4 wing guns. Some planes have a synchronized cannon on the bottom of the fuselage. This fighter, with or without fixed landing gear, has an armored bucket seat and 2 strips of armor on the bottom of the cockpit. Again, the best angle of attack is from a front quarter or from the rear. Now you should be able to identify the 2 Japanese fighters, but let's be sure. Coming at you is our P-36 together with the Japanese fighters. Can you tell which is which? The 96-97 is on top, the improved fighter is next, and last is our P-36. A side view of these airplanes compares the easily identified P-36 with the Japanese fighters. The 96-97 is on top, the newer fighter is in the middle. Since Japanese airplanes are inferior to our own, a good U.S. fighting pilot should be able to bag his quota of Japs every time he goes after them.
Successor to the Heinkel 111 and designed to rival Britain's 4-engine bombers, the Heinkel 177 is now in service with the Luftwaffe. Like our newest bombers, she has 4 engines, not 2 radials as you might think. Each nacelle conceals 2 inline engines geared together and contained in the wing. Each of these nacelles has a flat-fronted radiator. That's how you get the radial engine effect. She was primarily designed for use against shipping. She can carry torpedoes, and she may be used as a dive bomber, in which case look out for dive breaks. She can carry a very heavy bomb load for a German, so the Heinkel 177 is something worth watching for. Now let's pick out her recognition features as she goes through a turn. Straight away, long nose and wide wingspan, 103 feet as a matter of fact. Mid-wing too, unusual for a German bomber. Yes, the length of the nose stands out, and there are the short, blunted nacelles we warned you about. Now see how terrific is the span of those slender wings in comparison with the length of the fuselage. Squared off tail plane, large single fin and rudder squared off too. Rear gun position also. Another unusual point for a Bosch product. Plenty new and plenty to pick her out by. Well, after that bit of aerobatics, let's keep her still and let the artist have his fling. Blunter nose than the old Heinkel. Yes, that's right. Gun turret on top, and a nice bulge of a gondola underneath. Straight top to fuselage. Underside curves up to tail. Quite a slim fuselage for a heavy bomber. Large squared off fin and rudder. Yes, a Heinkel bite out of it. Gun position at the tip of the fuselage. Our artist seems to be quite at home with the Heinkel 177. But are you? Well, let's come in close and get him to help us again. Very round nose with gun turret offset and gondola underneath. Mid-wing and yet German. One more blow for those who rely on rules. Slight dihedral from those apparently radial engines. Remember, 2 engines only as far as recognition goes. Tailplane out of sight, but fin and rudder very much in sight. Yes, long nose, fully glazed and blunted. And see the effect of a straight center section on that trailing edge. Compare the short blunted nacelles with that very long nose. Take another look at the offset turret while we've got it nicely in view. Slender wings, wide in span, with rectangular center section between nacelles. Straight taper from there to rounded tips. Squared off tailplane with definite taper to leading edge adds one more clue. Gun position projecting well beyond the tailplane. Large squared off tail unit. Yes, that's right, the Heinkel bite. All right, Augustus, that's enough. Well, now we've got rid of the artist, let's get down to realities. See how much you can remember. From glazed nose to tip of tail, you'll find clues which make her the Heinkel 177, one of Germany's latest efforts in heavy bomber design. Mid-wing but Bosch, you remembered that, I hope. Overhead, there she goes, the big German bomber. Check up on nose length and wings, which are wide in span and appear to be set well back on the fuselage. Higher up, those wing tips appear almost pointed, and the characteristics of the tailplane are still very obvious. Closer inspection again shows up the gun position beyond the tailplane. Something new in German bombers, the Heinkel 177. So a mid-wing monoplane with blunted glazed nose, long in plan view compared to those 2 short phony radials, squared off fin and rudder with characteristic Heinkel bite. It's a Heinkel 177.
Junker's Ju-52, affectionately known by those who flew her as Iron Annie, or Auntie U, or simply Auntie. The tri-motor transport, which also served as a bomber, was to become a legend, not only for her longevity, but also for her flexibility. She was in fact as much a symbol of the Luftwaffe as the Stuka and the 109.
The Ju-52 was like the DC 2 and 3, I would say an iconic aircraft because its reliability, it's 3-engine aircraft, very, very reliable, and one wonders why they weren't more frequently used in the UK and the USA, 3-engine layout, because it was very common in Italy, was used quite widely in Germany, and but you just have rare cases of it in the States, like the tri-motor Ford, but it's a great solution.
The Ju-52 was constructed with the same corrugated material that the Junkers company was to rely upon for over 2 decades, going back almost to the Great War. During this period, aircraft much larger than the 52, such as the Behemoth Junker G38, also used the same cladding. However, as the 30s came to a close, Junker's corrugated hallmark was starting to look a little tired, especially compared with other foreign types like the American DC-2 and DC-3. Nevertheless, Auntie still stayed in service. The Junkers company had in fact designed a replacement for Auntie prior to the start of World War II. Although they still wanted to retain its tri-motor configuration, it was in most other respects a totally new aircraft.
The Ju-252. It was a distinct difference from the very famous Ju-52. It had smooth thrust wings and a very large cargo fuselage capacity. One of the main features about it was it had a wonderful loading ramp, which was operated hydraulically at the back end of the aeroplane. Now, this was a tail-wheel aeroplane, but after landing, the ramp could be operated and would come down and raise the aircraft's tail. And it was absolutely top-notch. And the incredible thing about it was we actually did experiments to see how this thing would react on the airplane in flight. And at the large enemy aircraft exhibition in October of 1945, we flew this aircraft with the ramp fully open, and as a gimmick, we had a chap sitting on one of the lower steps on the ramp, obviously with a harness attached, but he was sitting there pretending to smoke a cigarette. Well, it appealed very heavily to the crowds, and it was quite surprising that this aircraft had this tremendous range of central gravity and was very trimmable in that situation.
The Ju-252 had a stablemate, the Ju-352, which was made largely of wood to reduce the use of aluminum. The Ju-352 proved less successful, although they were the first transport types to use a tailgate ramp that provided a flat surface for loading. Between the two models, only 65 examples were actually produced. When Germany was attacked on two fronts in 1944, they went out of production, as the priority was more fighters to defend the fatherland. Another military transport which used a rear ramp also came from the drafting boards of Junkers. The Ju-290 evolved from the 4-engine Junkers 90 airliner, which showed great promise as an advanced design just before the war. The Ju-90 airliner, like most other aircraft of the time, was a tail dragger. So when Junkers created a transport version, they employed the same lifting tailgate developed for the earlier 252. For the time, the Ju-290 transport was a large aircraft when it first came into service in August of 1942.
When I flew the Ju-290, I was very impressed with it in the sense that it had a lovely cockpit layout, a very comfortable layout. It was obviously a civil aircraft adapted to a military role, rather like the Focke-Wulf 200. It was almost similarly armed, not quite so heavily armed as the Focke-Wulf 200, but flew very nicely. And I think it would have made a comfortable, with a little adaptation, a comfortable transatlantic piston-engine aircraft in the early days. In fact, after the war, of course, the Americans, they had a group like I had, retrieving aircraft, German aircraft after the war. They were called Watson's Whizzers. And Colonel Watson actually flew the Ju-290 back to America via Bermuda. And he was very impressed with it, as indeed I was too.
It was certainly the largest land-based powered aircraft in the Luftwaffe inventory. The type was 8 foot longer than the airliner version, had more powerful engines, and a very considerable range. It had been claimed, although never proven, that it made direct flights between Germany and Japan. There was also a need for smaller transports, even smaller than Auntie U. This need was filled by the conversion of a medium-sized glider into a powered aircraft. The Gotha 244 became available in 1943, created by the simple addition of 2 small radial engines to a standard production glider. The radials were actually made in occupied France and as such had little impact on German war production. About 130 of the type were made and proved useful in moving small numbers of troops or light vehicles over short distances. Using the same glider to power plane conversion, the massive Messerschmitt 323 was another attempt to maximize the Luftwaffe's airborne assets.
The Gigant, I saw the 4-engine version and the 6-engine version of the Gigant. In fact, I taxied the 6-engine version. It wasn't airworthy, but I taxied it just as a matter of interest. It was a vast airplane, or glider, of course, and the one I taxied was the D model, and it had 6 Gnome-Rhone engines, and the 4-engine one had proved difficult, inadequate number of engines, and still had to have some assisted takeoff, such as JATO, or rocket assistance on takeoff. As pure gliders towed by aircraft like the Heinkel 111Z, they were a failure in my opinion. You had 3 Heinkel aircraft playing around with this, or the large Z, and all of them, the whole thing was a very dicey operation indeed. But once you got the 6-engine version going, it was practicable, but of course it was a large, sluggish airplane.
Because of its great size and slow speed, the Me-323 was a sitting duck, and many were destroyed by the Allies. But when escorted by fighters, its ability to carry large loads was much valued by the Wehrmacht, especially in the mayhem that became the Eastern Front. Blom & Voss built another remarkable transport aircraft, a long-range flying boat named the Viking. The BV-222 story is not unlike the Ju-90s. It was originally ordered as a commercial flying boat. However, as the war approached, the Viking evolved into a large military transport, which also performed some patrol duties. 6 powerful engines propelled the Viking. At first, they were fueled with gasoline, but the BV-222 was intended to be refueled at sea by submarines. Since U-boats are driven by diesel, the practical solution was to convert the Viking to diesel engines. Blom & Voss had another prototype flying boat that was even more advanced. The BV-238 was designed to cope with harsher sea conditions than the Viking could handle. Working only with U-boats, it was expected to go on very lengthy missions. it was designed to be almost self-supporting and able to deal with many types of heavy cargo. To assist in loading the 238, it was equipped with a massive forward waterproof door in the bow. This could be employed in a similar manner to landing craft on a beachhead. What you see here is only a service hatch set within the waterproof door. To assist in handling cargo, there were derricks and winches located on the hull, making the BV-238 more like a merchant ship than an aircraft. There was also a tunnel which ran the length of both wings, providing internal access to the 6 engines, even when the flying boat was in the air. Only one BV-238 was completed. It was destroyed by Allied fighters just before the end of the war. The final example of Luftwaffe gigantism came in the form of the Junkers 390, a stretch 290 with a very capacious 110 feet long fuselage. Propelling this enormous aircraft would require 2 more engines than the Ju-290 and a much greater wing, over 160 feet in span. The extra wing length actually required an additional set of wheels on each side to support the craft as it landed. Only 2 Junkers 390s were ever built, but even these required enormous resources both in labour and material. After the war, only one of the Ju-390s was ever accounted for. This led to speculation as to what happened to the other aircraft, as the type had more range than any other German plane. When they already had a proven workhorse in the Ju-52, why did the Third Reich become so preoccupied with limited numbers of large transport aircraft? One possibility was that Germany had not prepared for a long war. The premise of Blitzkrieg was achieving quick victory by lightning attacks. The English Channel stymied Blitzkrieg against Britain. With the rapid fall of France, crossing the Channel became the Wehrmacht's primary objective. This could partially be achieved by gliders, which led to large transport planes like the Gigant. Often overlooked, there was one other design that evolved in the fatherland during those turbulent years: the Arado 232, sometimes called the Millipede. Just after Germany invaded Poland, the Air Ministry issued a request for a replacement for the Ju-52. It must be equipped with a rear entry ramp and would employ 2 of the recently developed BMW 801 radial engines. Arado designers quickly came up with a brilliant design that embraced all the latest thinking in transport aircraft. It had a rear loading ramp, but unlike most other medium-sized transports of the time, it used a tricycle undercarriage. This type of wheel arrangement would not usually work in rough terrain. However, Arado engineers solved the problem by placing a row of small rollers under each side of the fuselage. If necessary, the main gear could be adjusted to kneel the plane down. The 232 would then simply crawl over obstacles on its many rollers, which led to its nickname, the Millipede.
At the end of World War II, we were, of course, interested in bringing quite a lot of heavy stuff back from Germany, like wind tunnel gear and even airplanes. And we were looking for cargo planes. We used a German aircraft called the Arado 232, known as the Millipede because of the large number of bogie wheels that it had as part of its undercarriage layout. And this was a most effective system of operating on grass airfields, which abounded in Germany in the early stages, and where traction was very difficult to find under adverse weather conditions.
The Millipede's level loading ramp made it ideal for all types of cargo. But the Arado 232 had a major problem. It came in the form of this plane, the very successful Focke-Wulf 190, known as the Butcher Bird. The 190 used the same BMW 801 radial engines envisioned for the new Arado transport. After the German failure at the Battle of Britain, there was no doubt that the new FW90 had priority for the BMW engines. The Arado would have to look elsewhere for suitable power plants, but there were none with the same power as the BMW 801. To solve this problem, a 4-engine millipede was proposed with a larger wing. This change led to delays. The end result was that possibly the best military transport of the Second World War was limited to a production run of less than 20 examples, leaving Auntie to soldier on alone. Eventually, almost 5,000 Ju-52s were made. Many continued to fly around the world for a number of years after the war, including some with the RAF. But Auntie was not their only Luftwaffe transport. 2 Arado 232 millipedes were also flown by the Royal Air Force.
If you enjoyed this video, please remember to like and subscribe. And as always, thank you for watching.